All right.
Okay, welcome to the Music Space, our first show ever. Yeah, I'm Gary from LearnToPlayMusic.com, and this is really exciting. We have our first guest of all of the shows, and it's Ricky Horton from Florida, USA. Say hi, Ricky.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Yeah, that sounded really cool, mate. Okay, so the Music Space, our goal is to interact and ask questions, inspire musicians. You can ask questions on the blog, or you can ask questions on the show live. But you'll need your Q&A app, and don't forget to wear your headphones. That'd be great, because that's going to stop feedback. Okay, so what we're going to do today is ask Ricky some questions about his musical abilities and what inspired him. So I'll start with pretty much Ricky. When did you start playing?
I started playing at 10. I went over, I was hanging out with my... What's that?
10 this morning? Sorry, bad gag. 10 years old.
10 years old, yes.
How old are you now, Rick?
23. 23.
Cool.
Yeah. 24 in August.
Excellent.
So.
Yeah. What inspired you to start playing, Ricky?
Well, initially, I was at my friend's house, and he had a guitar, and he was doing something, and I was just like, "Hey, man, show me how to do that. That's the coolest thing I've ever seen." And I had played all kinds of sports and all that stuff, and nothing ever really, inspired me and got me excited. And he showed me how to play James Bond or whatever. And I was just, man, I was so excited, and I went home. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I went home and I was like, "Mom, Dad, I have to play guitar." I'm, and I started taking lessons and.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That actually puts a big smile on my face, because that takes me back too. Yeah. So tell us about your music history, as in what you've been doing over the years, and any bands you've been in that you care to mention, or projects that stand out for you.
Well, since I started somewhat young. I mean, I wish I could have started at 5, but a lot of the high school stuff, and I played with friends, and that's really when it kicked it into gear. And a friend of mine, I met at a music store, and it was the first person, because when you're like 12, 13, you don't know a whole lot of other players, especially ones that have been doing it for a little while. And I played with this guy, and turns out we went to the same high school together, and he was like, intimidating me a little bit, and I got real excited. And so I started jamming then, and that really lit the fire, and so I started playing in I wanted to play in a real original band and everything. So I joined what was it called at the time? They were called La Bamba, and it was a rock band, and it was kind of sounded like Weezer, but we did some cooler stuff, and it really made me learn about going from being a room kind of guitar player, where I'm jamming to other stuff that I like, or kind of you have that safety zone, but when you're playing live, it's do or die, and if you miss a note, time has gone by, you can't go back and fix it. And you know, it really opened my eyes. And so we played, you know, all over town, and we ended up going to Atlanta and recording in the studio, actually where the Police recorded, which was really cool. It's a big, beautiful wooden room, and that was a really cool experience, and that was my first exposure to the whole studio process.
Cool, man. What style of music were you playing?
At that time, I was playing a lot of rock.
Yeah.
You know, I was a teenager. You know, it's cool and fun. I was taking lessons throughout all of that, and I played in jazz band in high school. I also played. We did like a play, and I did some of that kind of stuff. And the first stuff I actually learned on guitar for a good year was mainly classical music. So.
Okay. So, do you have a favorite guitarist or a favorite band or something that's perhaps inspired you more than anyone else?
I would say early on, definitely Jimi Hendrix. He was the first guy that made me go, wow, you can do that with a guitar. You know, that he was the first one that really blew my mind, and I think I'd have to give him that title.
Yeah, cool. Same as many guitarists. What are you doing now as far as projects and playing?
Well, after high school, I went to Berklee College of Music up in Boston, which was fantastic, and really kind of got me excited about music as a whole, more than just playing guitar. And I got more into writing, and I got more into wanting to create. After there, I moved to Jacksonville, which is where I am now, and I played in this one band. We did a record. We went out to LA to meet with this producer, and he wanted all this money for what he said was a big thing. And we get out there, and I was like, listen, man, to tell you the truth, for the price that you're asking to make 3 songs, I could build this studio and do like 3 records. And I was like, you know, we came back. It was me, the singer of the band, and the drummer. We all went out there together. But when we came back, I kind of said, hey, look, man, you know, I'm not going to try and do this. You know, I'm going to play in this band, hope somebody picks us up, hope we get signed, and hope we get a good deal in the event that we get signed. You know, there's so many variables, and it's hardly a guaranteed success getting a record deal. And so we came back and said, you know what, we're going to do our own thing. And we wanted to make more dance-oriented music, more current stuff, more pop kind of, just more current music. And the singer wasn't about it, so we started our own thing. And that was a year ago. We just finished it up. We just got our songs back from mastering. And now we're starting a production company. I've been teaching a little bit, a few days a week. The drummer, we both sing and stuff, and so he does lessons on the side. And now that we've guinea pigged ourselves, we're gonna start taking on other artists and stuff like that. So I'm really focused on the production and the creative side.
That's cool, mate.
Yeah.
So do you have any live weekly gigs that you're doing at the moment, or stuff that's sort of just keeping your hand in as a performer?
Right now, it's been all studio, just because it's been kind of the home stretch. So I haven't been doing that, but I was playing. I always try to play cover gigs when I can, anything that pops up, because I still want to keep that. I love playing live. Most musicians do. It's unlike anything else. So I definitely always try when the opportunity comes up. I just been so focused over the last few months that it's fallen a little behind.
Yeah. I'm with you, but I guess I'm at the stage of my life where I actually prefer studio time to live time. But that's all good. What we could do, Ricky, if you want to play us a little bit more, do you have something of your own you can play us? Just a little little lick that you like, or anything?
Yeah, I kind of I made up this little kind of Dorian melody, and it's kind of, I was jamming in C minor earlier, and so it's kind of still in the same thing. But yeah, and it kind of, I like to play a melody and then kind of work off of it. And I think that's a good way, especially if you're improvising, you're making stuff up, to give people something to kind of latch onto, so it feels like, you know, a thought out musical kind of guitar solo. I find that that's a really useful technique.
Cool.
So, for instance, the melody is just. You know, so
that's cool,
kind of just, you know, grooving off of that, and then if, you know, say if we were going to go into a solo section, you can kind of use the same rhythmic motif, the da 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 da, do that, but in other places. So that's kind of that's what I like to do when I'm presented with a new kind of area, and even in the solo writing process, I always try to take from the idea of something that's already been kind of established in the song. I think it gives a little more coherence.
That's great. That sort of is a nice little segue into our next topic, or the topic of the day, which is about rhythm and melody. And you're a writer yourself. When you are writing, what comes first for you, the rhythm or the melody?
You know, it kind of depends. I'll find myself. Well, ultimately, every melody has a rhythm, so you can have rhythm without a melody, I guess. So oftentimes, if there's a feel that I like, I guess it depends on what I'm trying to capture. So sometimes I'll have a melodic idea. That just kind of pops in my head, and then I'll build something around the melodic idea. And generally, since it's a melody, it kind of has a rhythm, it has a tempo built in. But sometimes, if I hear a song or hear a groove or something, and I like the way that feels, then I'll kind of start with a rhythmic foundation, so to speak, and then kind of build from there.
Yep. I know myself, it can differ. I can, perhaps the first time, one tune, I hear a melody in my head and I elaborate from there, and, you know, the groove comes naturally. Like you said, the melody usually has a rhythm of its own. Mm-hmm. Or I'll have a lyric perhaps in my head, just a vocal idea, which often creates a melody, a rhythm as well, and then add the melody later. So yeah, for me it's never the same twice, I guess. But,
yeah,
that's right. And what sort of things inspire you to write?
You know, I guess the same as you. You know, sometimes it kind of depends on the situation. Sometimes I'll just be walking around. I just have music in my head kind of all the time.
Yeah. You
sometimes
write away from your guitar.
What's that?
You write away from your guitar as well?
A lot.
Yeah.
In fact, I prefer to.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
I find an analogy I've used with my students a lot is that if you're writing with your fingers, well, your fingers don't have ears, and so, you know, they're going to play what they're used to doing, and they don't know if it sounds good or not. So I'd much rather get away from that and hear a melody. Because if I hum a melody and it sounds weird, I can change it. But most people that, if you've been a musician for a while, I can go melodically humming or whistling or whatever. I can go wherever my ear wants to go before I make the noise. And that, to develop that on guitar is, much more difficult.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think it's great to get away from your guitar to write and come back to it to consolidate your ideas, or any instrument really. I think writing away from your instrument actually gives you a load more freedom, and you're right, you tend to write what you're not playing. So if I sit down and I start playing the guitar, I'm going to be playing pretty much the same things that I know. So the likelihood of writing something different probably won't happen on the instrument. So I remember Pat Metheny, great American guitarist, being interviewed, and he met a famous conductor, I think it was Goldstein, who said to him, "You should put your guitar down and go and compose." And all of a sudden, Pat started the first circle idea, because all the ideas and melodies were coming to him walking down the road, as opposed to sitting with his guitar. So I think, yeah, that's a fantastic way to compose. Obviously, you need to have a good idea of the music in your head and what key you're in, and that just comes with experience, I think. Okay, that's cool. So you have a little bit of a practice routine, Ricky, at all you can share with us?
Yeah, I used to be a whole lot more strict than I am. I have been lately, but I always, to me, no matter what your routine is, this is something that I always try to stress, and no one ever wants to do it, but metronome all the time, no matter what, because okay. When I think of it this way, if anybody, even if they're a musician or not, if they like music and they're listening to music, they'll tap their foot or do something to the rhythm, almost as an instinct. No one has to show it to them. So if you're playing and that gets interrupted, the rhythm of the tempo gets interrupted, then they're going to get thrown off. And I think beyond anything, I'd rather play a bad note at the right time than a good note at the wrong time.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good answer. No,
so
cool.
I always try to do metronome, and I'll do alternate picking stuff. And for me, I always try to make exercises a little bit more musical. So, like for instance, if I wanted to practice like string skipping, like with alternate picking, instead of just, which is, just awful sounding, I just tried to make up a little riff. So it's just a little more interesting to hear, but it's a good stretching exercise. It forces you to do a lot of stuff. So I always try to build ideas. What is it that I'm struggling with right now? Is my vibrato not as good as it was? Am my hands gotten out of sync? Because I'm sure any guitarist has experienced. Your abilities in certain areas fluctuate depending on, if I'm spending all my time playing blues, then when I go to play country stuff, it's, I'm going to have to freshen up a little bit. I'm going to have to, get used to that again. And so, I always try to, where do I want to improve? And I try to build a song, or not a song, but, something musical out of it. And I find that it makes it easier to keep doing, because it doesn't get boring to listen to. If that really,
yeah, I agree with that.
Is helpful, but
no, that's a great answer. I think being honest with yourself and saying, okay, what can I get better at? Where were my weaknesses perhaps in the last performance, or what are the things that I wish I could do better? That's really a good way of looking at what you need to work on, and it's different for every one of us. So yeah, I think it's important to, every time you pick up your instrument, whatever it may be, is to try and look at it from a new approach, and that sometimes can be just a matter of getting on the net and hearing somebody else play, which can point you down a different alleyway. I think is really important. But for me, it's always got to be musical. For me to want to keep playing, there needs to be some sort of musical enjoyment for me. And you're right, even a really boring, something like that, you can change just by changing the fingering, anything like that, that just changes the way your brain usually looks at the practice time. And if you don't, then it's usually pretty easy to just put the instrument down and go and make a pizza.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think we've got some questions. I think we've got some questions from some other people at the moment. Is that right, Ben?
Yep. Sarah asks, I'm very new to guitar. Should I focus on learning rhythm first or melody first?
Okay. Sarah wants to know, she's just started learning the guitar, and should she focus on rhythm or melody first? Do you want to answer that one, Ricky?
I mean, I could give my opinion, yeah.
Yeah, do it. That's what you're here for.
I do think that, kind of on the point I was making earlier, rhythm, without rhythm, there is no melody. So I think that you really have to feel the rhythm before you should really do anything.
Yeah.
And I've even had, because, and I'm sure you've noticed this too, when guitar, when you're teaching newer players especially, a piano, you can walk up, push down, and it sounds like a piano. But to make a guitar sound like a guitar, you have to, contort your hand. You got to make sure you push all the strings down, get all the clearance, and then play. So there's a lot of stuff getting in the way of you even kind of doing that. And I think while you're getting comfortable with the instrument, it's very important to reinforce, just kind of staying on time. And I've even had students just try to clap along to a metronome, until you can just not even think about it, until it kind of becomes ingrained. And I think that really just lends itself to better music in general.
So you're saying, Ricky, basically, like you said before, you practice with a metronome, and so you highly recommend, especially to those that are learning, or even intermediate or advanced, to have a metronome going every time you play some sort of a groove, or a drum machine, or something similar that's keeping time. Yeah?
Yeah. What do you think?
Cool. I'm pretty much the same. I think if you start learning the melody and the rhythm together, and keep reinforcing both of them as pretty much the gods of music, I guess, or the gods of modern music, then hopefully they'll both develop at the same time, so you can it'll just give you a greater voice as a musician, melodically and rhythmically is the goal we all want as musicians, isn't it? To speak to listeners.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Do we have any more questions, Ben?
Sam asks, am I in the right place to see the real Ricky Horton?
Did you hear that, Ricky?
Yeah. I guess you are, Sam.
It's the real deal. All the way from Florida, Jacksonville, Florida.
Yeah.
And we also have a question, when you are live playing and you make a mistake, how do you handle that? I know some people get paralyzed when this happens to them.
Did you hear that, Ricky?
Yeah. That's a big one. And it takes a little practice to just learn to kind of not let it get you, because it can be very discouraging. But honestly, the best thing to do is forget about it and worry about what you're going to play next. You know, and try to play it off like you did it on purpose if you can. I think that's the best. You know, really, it's just don't even think about it. Don't, because more than likely, if you start thinking about the mistake you made, you're just going to make a whole bunch more.
Yeah, good answer.
Move on.
You know, I think laugh it off is a good one too. Have a smile, laugh with the other musicians, because most of them will know that you've made the mistake. That's if you are actually with other musicians. But generally, the laugh creates more laughter, and most of the people in the audience will probably think you're just having a great time, and they wouldn't have even heard the bum note or whatever it was. When you're on your own, I guess it's a little bit of a different story. But I still try and use the same approach. Or if I'm doing a solo gig, I might actually share the joke with the audience and tell them that you know, James Taylor used to make the mistake in the same place. So there's always a way of getting out of it, because it's gone, and we have the luxury in the studio of getting rid of it. But live is always a different story.
Yeah.
Any more questions, Ben?
Gary asks, what scales do you use the most when you're improvising, and what's the most important one to learn?
Well, I think, well, Ricky and I have already talked about that earlier, didn't we, Rick? I think pentatonics, would you agree?
Yeah, but the you know, as far as from a theory kind of standpoint, I think honestly the most important scale is the scale that is every diatonic scale, the major scale, because if you know it, your fingers will already, if you get used to whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, that repeats always and forever. So I find sometimes if you think about it scale by scale, your playing can get kind of mechanical. And so I think the best thing is to try to learn what they all sound like. As far as being useful, yeah, pentatonic is very useful because it omits some of those notes that would have to be changed, especially in blues when we're using dominant chords all the time. Yeah,
I look at it as pentatonic is a great scale, but you can add as many notes to it as you like. But yeah, the major scale is king, really, to me at the end of the day as well, because it's what we go back to explain where we're at. If we want to write the chart to whatever it is we're playing, the major scale is always the king there. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I definitely think so, and I find that it's the most useful for developing your ears, because once you understand what the scales or the modes or whatever, what the feeling that they provide, Dorian feels a lot different than regular minor, and Phrygian feels even more different than that. And when you learn those, when you get to where now the scale has an emotional response, then you can really use it in a musical, expressive kind of way.
Yeah, totally agree. Even though they're pretty much the same notes, just played in different inversions, and that's the mystery. That's the great mystery of it, isn't it? Fantastic. Do we have any more questions, Ben?
One more. Bob says, appreciated the quote, "Your fingers have ears." How much time do you spend on warm-up and routine scale stuff daily?
Ricky?
Usually, I think to really see substantial improvement, and the hardest I ever practiced was at Berkeley, and I mean no less than 2 hours a day, honestly, if you really want to really reinforce it, because at that point you are literally just beating it into your brain, and I think you can kind of toy around with practice for 10-15 minutes, but it doesn't really sink in. But once you know, and I'm not saying play the same scale for 2 hours because you'll probably want to shoot yourself, but at least try to mix it up. But I think, you know, somewhere in that time range is really when the stuff starts to, and if you do that every day, I mean, there's no way you won't see improvement.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's got to be something that you enjoy, you know, and you don't want to get up and be rolling your eyes because you've got to play the guitar. I think it's most great guitarists and musicians just do it because that's the thing they love the most, and they don't need any particular motivation at all than just music, which is wonderful. Do we have any more questions, Ben? No, we're all good. Well, we're going to pretty much wrap it up there. That was great having you along, Ricky. And,
cool. Thank you for having me.
I wish you all the best with the rest of your career, which I'm sure is going to be a beauty.
Thanks.
And hopefully we'll have you back on the show in the future and talk about what you've been doing in the interim. Yeah,
I'd love to. By then we should have everything set up with the new project, and I think it's an interesting. I've incorporated guitar solos into pop music, and so you know it might be kind of interesting.
We look forward to hearing that, Ricky. It's been a pleasure having you along.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay, everyone, thanks for watching Music Space. I'm Gary from learntoplaymusic.com, and I'd just like to close with a bit of a tribute to a great Adelaide saxophonist, Mike Stewart, who sadly passed away a few days ago. He's going to be sorely missed in the Adelaide music community. And yeah. So thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week, same time. We'll have a new guest. Look forward to it. Bye.